Get smart, Vince. Ever since I hooked up your outfit all over the state, you've been rolling in cabbage, and I know it. Your take is 5 times what it was. But to keep it that way, you gotta keep me.
7-Eleven Ocean Drive was an excellent crime noir film starring Edmond O'Brien as an average guy rising to the top in the world of illegal betting, and as often happens in films like this, it's about his rise and inevitable fall. And it's got some great performances and plenty of local footage, and I really enjoyed this. And as my 3 fans know, I'm always on the lookout for some good films with Edmond O'Brien. So let's take a look at this one. Film opens up with an interesting title card that mentions how powerful underworld interests tried to halt the production of this film. Wow. And this wasn't just a gimmick for the film. I mean, apparently this was a real threat that the filmmakers had to deal with. But I'll get to that more at the end of the review. We follow along with 2 detectives who are on the way to take down someone named Mal Granger, and in typical crime noir film fashion, we jump back to the past to get the full story. There's Edmond O'Brien as the character Mal Granger. He's working at a phone company, and he does a good job, but he's not really making a lot of money. He apparently loves betting on horses, though, and much like I enjoy betting on cryptocurrency. Well, Mal is hanging out with his bookie, Chippy, actor Sammy White, who was an unexpectedly enjoyable character through the film. He helps Mal with his bets, and over coffee suggests that he can make more money working with a local bookie guy. So they head over to Liberty Finance, where they've got all these bookmaker guys chatting on the phones, and he meets the character Vince Walters, who's played by actor Barry Kelly. I've seen him in other tough guy roles in films like The Asphalt Jungle before. He's this big, beefy kingpin type character. And he supplies the bookmakers with results of every race directly from the track. Well, he offers Mal a job to use his telephone skills to help expand their system through the state of California. He basically puts them to work using some of his technical skills to help them, do better at making money. Character Trudy Maxwell arrives. She's played by the lovely actress Dorothy Patrick, and Mal gets friendly with her right off the bat. And his character is generally enthusiastic to, leave his old job at the telephone company and jump into this new world. Later, he's out at a steak dinner with some friends, and we see a little more insight into his character. Now, true, he's jazzed about the new role, but he's not really all that loyal to his girl, who has future plans with him. He really seems kind of aloof, kind of a jerk. In fact, you watch him, he's actually blowing smoke in her face as she's talking. And then he leaves her to go over to get fresh with Trudy. But he doesn't get very far when the character Vince Walters arrives, and Mal, well, he just sort of scurries away. So we see the detectives begin to assemble in order to investigate some of this gambling going on. Character Lieutenant Pete Wright shows up. He's played by actor Howard St. John. I've seen him in other films. He was in Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train. And now that's a film I really want to watch again and review. And by the way, my 3 fans might be wondering, hey Rob, what criteria do you use to jump from one film review to another? And honestly, it's just the way the wind blows. It can be anything. Sometimes I'm on a William Holden kick. Others, it's just a certain genre like Western or crime. In this case, seeing Howard St. John had me thinking it might be time for some more Hitchcock, so stay tuned. Anyhow, Lieutenant Wright is going to check more closely into the shady dealings of this Liberty Finance place. Now, meanwhile, Mal is totally getting into his new role. He's enthusiastically setting up his fancy electronic equipment. He's wiring up a guy with some high-tech transmission equipment for spying on a horse race. So there's this horse race where the bookmaker guys have their scheme going on to listen into the changing odds at the race. Now, Trudy is there, though, and she is quickly nabbed by the cops, and they give her the old heave-ho, thinking that she's a signaler. But right away, she's out and driving along with Mal and doesn't seem all that bothered. I mean, she wasn't thrown in jail or anything. Now, there's a little bit of chemistry there between Mal and her, but, well, stay tuned on that one. Mal continues to fine-tune his electronic system, and before you know it, he's got a scheme to take control of the outfit himself and put boss Vince Walters under his hand. And he wants a 20% cut, and Vince has no choice but to oblige. Well, a few months have passed, and the detectives continue their search, and I love some of the location footage in this film as they stop at Simon's Diner. I watch these old films, I'll pause them, and then I'll go to look them up and see if these places are still there. And I hate to say it, I think this Simon's Diner is gone. A little later, a character named Weiss shows up. He can't make his payments, And when Walter starts to threaten him and his family, he flips out, loses it, and shoots him and leaves. So Mal is basically in charge. He's the new crime boss. Now, he does get interviewed by the police, but, he makes some excuses and they can't really hold him on anything. So Mal, he's moving up in the world. He's got a decent-sized beach home. His bookie friend Chippy shows up again and warns him in a friendly way about the dangers of growing too big in the crime world. And soon enough, we cut to a group of well-dressed criminal fellows led by Carl Steffens, played by actor Otto Kruger. I caught him a while ago in my film review of Dracula's Daughter. And he's kind of this crime boss, and he wants to move in on Mal's operation. They want a piece of the action. So they send down Larry Mason. He's played by actor Don Porter. He's been in a few of the films I've reviewed recently, like The Night Monster with Bela Lugosi. Well, he goes down, and he's there with his wife, Gail, played by lovely actress Joanne Drew. She was also in the movie Red River with John Wayne. So they're out in California, and they want to talk to him, but, Mal's kind of evasive about this. He goes to a ball game, and he seems a tad too friendly with Larry's wife. That could be a problem there, buddy. Well, the next day, they meet with the crime boss, Carl Steffens. They meet him by poolside. Well, they make Mal an offer, and he seems a little reluctant to go along with it, but he still seems a little too friendly towards Larry's wife. And Larry seems ready to beat him up, but old Carl says to be patient.
I wouldn't be too hasty. Things are working out exactly as I planned.
Well, Mal is at a bar, and who should show up but Gail, and she gets very friendly with him. And you can kind of see there's some manipulation going on here, and soon they're dancing, and before you know it, they've embraced in a kiss. Oh, come on, Mal. Bad move, buddy. Well, soon Mal agrees to the terms of this crime syndicate, and he announces to all his people that they're going to be taking over. And, there's a lot of grumbling, but the deal is that this syndicate wants the protection money from the bookies, and those who refuse, well, it's bad news.
Bookmakers were no match for the strong-arm tactics of the hoodlums.
Well, Trudy discovers that the syndicate group is ripping off Mal, and he's pretty angry about it. And he's also planning to run off with Gail, so, he's got to get his priorities straight here. Well, Mal goes to a boxing match, and he's expecting to meet with Gail there, but instead he gets Larry. And I love kind of the sinister undertone of hatred from this guy. I mean, understandably, Mal's trying to run off with his wife, so he's a little annoyed about that, and Larry subtly reveals that he's basically beaten up Gail. And sure enough, Mal goes and visits her at the hospital. Nasty businesses these criminal syndicate fellows are running, but anyhow, Mal is scheming. And check out this scene at a club where I couldn't help but get a Casablanca vibe. Maybe it was the music. Well, Mal is stepping up his game, and he meets with an assassin. This character, Gizzy, who's played by actor Robert Osterloh, who, interestingly enough, was also in the film White Heat, one I watched and reviewed a long time ago with Edmond O'Brien and James Cagney. It's kind of funny that they're back together here. Well, he arranges for a hit to take care of this Larry fellow, and soon enough, Mal invites Larry and Gail over for cards and drinks and so on, and pretty soon, kapow, no more Larry. And there's a funeral scene, but soon after, this Gizzy the assassin guy, as is usually the case with these assassin characters, he wants a little more money from Mal. But Mal's not having any of that, and after meeting with him at a pier, he runs him over the edge. Yeah, Mal, now you've done it. You've kind of taken it a little too far, because now the detectives are really on the trail. So now Mal tries to elude suspicion by using a special device, and he calls this Lieutenant Wright, pretending to be in Palm Springs, for this alibi to kind of cover that he wasn't responsible. But the detectives notice a streetcar whistle on the tape, and they're suspicious of this Mal character. And even Gail is starting to distrust him, and we're seeing his character change into more and more of a big jerk, basically.
But I'd what?
Murder.
Don't say that. I don't like it.
Well, Mal and Gale, they get out of town. They head to Las Vegas, where Mal sets up this elaborate system to try to swindle the syndicate's Las Vegas bookies. He does this crazy thing with switching the times around and doing the betting to win, and it's a pretty clever idea, actually, and they do manage to pull it off and leave with a lot of money. But as is usually the case with heist films, there's always that weird, unexpected catch or twist, and in this case, it's that one of the bookies recognizes Chippy and reports him to the bosses. And of course, the detectives are on Mal's trail, and they've determined that his car was at the scene of the murder, and they're moving in. And you know, I love situations like this, where you think that this criminal hero might be getting away. He might pull it off scot-free. And yet at the same time, the walls seem to be closing in. Sure enough, the bad guys grab Chippy and they question him, and the crooks meet with the cops and give them information on Mal. And, you know, I love the mutual disgust between the cops and these crime syndicate guys here. You know, the cops have this attitude of, we'll get you scumballs later, but for now, we want Mal Granger. You know, that's kind of their attitude. I love it. And as we reach the end of the film, sure enough, the walls really are closing in on Mal and Gale. They make a run for it, and there's an exciting chase around Hoover Dam. And I'll let you check it out for yourself. You got to see the exciting conclusion, no spoilers. This was really a great film. So some closing thoughts. You know, I really enjoyed this one. And it's not just because I'm a huge fan of Edmond O'Brien, but rather that this was a clever, fast-paced, you know, rise and fall of the gangster story arc. And this was just very well done. And we all know that O'Brien's character is headed for trouble, and yet we just have to see how this is going to play out, and if he makes it or not. Now, as a side note, I've watched and reviewed quite a few films on this channel, and they're mostly from this Hays Code era. And I have to admit, I do find this time frame fascinating in that this window, mid-1930s to mid-50s roughly, Hollywood would hold to this depiction of criminal guys as the star of the film, basically getting their comeuppance by the end of the film. And I realized this would change a lot later on after the Hays Code era, but it is curious to me that even now in more modern times, it's pretty rare to see a story with a crime lord character who gets away with it by the end of the film. Even in more modern gangster films, they all tend to get their comeuppance at the end, so to speak. But back then, this was something that the Hays Code actually mandated. So it's really interesting to me. And, you know, I might do a separate video one of these days on the Hays Code and what that was all about. But it's just one of those things I like to point out. Edmond O'Brien here is, as always, amazing. This time as this villain protagonist. It's fun to see him play the bad guy when most of the roles I've seen him in so far have been those of a good guy. You know, like a insurance investigator or a man who's wrongly poisoned, things like that. He plays this role well, and, you know, he believably falls deeper and deeper into those trappings of sin. I thought his flight around the tunnels of Hoover Dam was really cool. It's very reminiscent of the movie He Walked by Night, the one with Richard Basehart when he's running around the Los Angeles sewer system.
We can't go any further, Mal. I just can't.
You've got to. Come on.
Actress Joanne Drew was also great here, and I really liked how, as Mal continues his descent into crime, her suspicion continues to grow visibly. And even during the Las Vegas caper, when things seem to be going well, she just seems cautious and apprehensive the whole time that something just isn't right. And she sticks with this poor guy all the way to the very end. Now, a note about actor Sammy White. He was kind of the goofy yet lovable accomplice Chippy. I haven't seen him in anything before, but I really liked his character here. You know, he's loyal and a little bit silly, and he sort of has an Alan Arkin vibe to him. And I thought he did well, kind of pairing with these other characters. And he's just one of those, you know, occasional actors that caught my attention. I really enjoyed him in this film. So at the beginning of this film, there's the title card that reads, quote, "Because of the disclosures made in this film, powerful underworld interests tried to halt production with threats of violence and reprisal. And it was only through the armed protection provided by members of the police department and the locales where the picture was filmed that this story was able to reach the screen," unquote. And I thought initially this was a little bit corny, but apparently this was legit. And producer Frank Seltzer would testify later before the Senate Crime Investigating Committee that the subject matter of this film, namely the gambling and exposing racing wire operations and using past posting techniques to cheat bookies and the system, it caused them to get into some trouble. They were refused permission to shoot in Las Vegas, I guess because of the connection with organized crime. They were even pressured to stop shooting at Hoover Dam, even though it's on government property. In an interview, he claimed his cameramen were told to go back to Los Angeles, where you belong. But they pressed on, even though they were apparently threatened with violence and sabotage. It's really some crazy stuff back then. 7-Eleven Ocean Drive was produced by Columbia Pictures and directed by Joe Newman, who also directed the sci-fi classic This Island Earth. Now, that's one of those films I just can't watch and review on this channel because I've watched it so many times with the Mystery Science Theater 3000 treatment. And honestly, the Rift version is the only one I really know. I watched it way too many times back in the day when I worked at Family Video in the 1990s. But it's still a great film anyway. I might get to it one of these days. So that's 7-Eleven Ocean Drive. Edmond O'Brien is amazing. This was a really good crime noir film, and it's one worth checking out.